Good luck.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Irene Varley, Director of Education for the Dibble Institute. And accompanying me today is Kathy Gidray, our webinar organizer. Hey, Kathy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Today's feature webinar is Essential Lessons Learned in Dating, Teaching the Stages of Relationships with Elsbeth Martindale. Before we begin, I'd like to point out a few housekeeping tips. If you should experience any audio difficulties during this broadcast, know that there is a phone number that you can call in. It's here on this slide, and it's also on your link connecting you in the email to this webinar. You can both listen on the phone and watch the broadcast on your computer at the same time should you have any problems. We invite your participation today, and that can be done in several ways. Elsbeth will ask a few poll questions that you can answer directly on your screen. There'll be a drop-down screen, and you can just answer those as your answer is indicated. She'll also be asking some hand-raising questions, and that can be answered by checking on your control panel. If you can find the icon on the top, I believe it's your left-hand side of the control panel, there's an icon that looks like a hand. If you just click on that, we'll get your response that you are saying yes to the answer. Your questions and comments can be entered through the question box on your control panel too. If you locate that, there's a question line, and you can add your question or comment at any time. We will be having a Q&A at the end of the presentation and have some planned pauses to address some relevant questions or comments during the broadcast. So if you don't hear from us about your question, we will answer them directly by email or through answering on the question box or on the control panel. This recording, or this webinar, is being recorded and available in 3 business days. For those of you joining us for the first time, we're really glad to have you with us today, and I have just a few brief words about the Dibble Institute. It is a secular national nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping young people with the skills and knowledge they need to develop healthy romantic relationships now and for their future. And this is Charlie and Helen on the screen right now. Charlie is our founder. He was an aeronautical engineer who in his retirement years was dedicated to working with young people. In doing so, he became so aware of the emotional challenges they faced. This became most evident when in the early 90s at his grandniece's wedding he heard her say, "Oh, Uncle Charlie, this is just my first wedding." Well, if you could understand, it was a time when the divorce rate was reaching its peak, and this response very much concerned Charlie. He had heard the many painful stories from youth that he was working with of their own parents' relationship issues. So Charlie indeed was concerned with the decreasing models of healthy relationships teens had to emulate. To make a long story short, Charlie quickly realized that little was being done to address the development of skills needed to form successful, healthy relationships. In 1996, with the cooperation of fellow businessmen, educators, and friends, he founded the Dibble Fund, now known as the Dibble Institute. Charlie's vision was to have accurate, unbiased, and timely research-based information available for you. And we pride ourselves in remaining true to Charlie's vision and trust the research for positive outcomes for children to be growing up in households where healthy, committed relationships are modeled. This is not to say we are anti-divorce, as we also realize there are marriages that quite frankly are best to end or maybe never should have happened. As far as sexual orientation goes, we believe all young people benefit from being in a healthy relationship and can learn the skills necessary to form them. Everyone benefits when healthy choices are made. Our view on cohabitation is to acknowledge the large percentage of couples who do and will cohabitate, and know that that relationship education teaches them that there are smarter ways to do so, to be intentional about their expectations, and to recognize the stage of the relationship at this particular point in time for them. With all that, I'm so happy to introduce Elsbeth Martindale today, who is a Portland, Oregon-based psychologist with over 25 years of clinical experience. She finds working with conceptual teaching tools to be a powerful way to assist clients in their growth. The Things to Know Before You Say Go card deck was developed by Dr. Martindale while working with clients around relationship issues of trust and intimacy. Elsbeth was concerned that her clients were not asking the deeper questions they needed to consider in order to protect their hearts. The Dibble Institute worked with Dr. Martindale on the activity book with the Things to Know Before You Say Go cards. It is a resource to help young people slow down and think with clarity, intelligence, passion, and about partnership choices and decisions. So to tell us more about the complex stages of relationship, it's my pleasure to present Dr. Elsbeth Martindale.
Thank you. It's delightful to be here on this webinar. I will transfer my screen.
Excuse me, this is Kathy. If you two would speak up a little bit, we're having some of the audience members have having a little bit difficult time. And if you do have a headset, anyone in the audience, that might help you hear a little bit better.
Okay. I am actually very happy to be doing this presentation on the stages of relationship development and focusing on teaching these stages to young adults and teens. The presentation is sort of geared towards teachers and educators, but the material will be applicable to anybody who's wanting to understand how relationships unfold and how to enhance the blossom or the fullness or health of a relationship. The information is based on the most current psychological theories for understanding healthy relationships, as well as my years of experience as a psychologist in private practice with adults and teens. In this discussion today, we're going to talk about I'm going to answer three important questions. The first is why stage awareness is important. And secondly, we'll talk about how do we explain and explore these stages of relationship development with young adults and teens. And finally, what tools are available for teaching these stages. So we'll start with why. Why is it important that we help teens understand stage development in relationships? First reason is because teens move really quickly into relationship, as do many adults. They do it without consciousness or choiceful awareness of the consequences. Stage awareness is important because it clarifies the boundaries and parameters and markers of each of the steps in this progression towards relationship development, making the steps clear and the expectations more visible. Stage awareness is also important because there are dangers in moving too quickly, and without clarity or consciousness, emotional and physical pain can result. Identifying the steps encourages people to be watchful of the journey so they can travel with caution and safety and arrive at a place of joyous connection. We're going to talk about the journey of relationship as if it were a beautiful road that we want to travel down. We'd like to make the road beautiful and safe for young adults as they travel towards partnership. So as we journey towards healthy partnership, what's helpful? What do we need to keep in mind? We need clarity about where we want to go, like an endpoint. What's the goal here? And in order to do that, we give, if we're traveling by car, we often take a map, or today it's, I guess, our phones with our GPS on it. But a map helps us see the terrain. The stages of relationship development helps teens and young adults see the terrain, see the the journey, the beginning parts, the middle parts, and the end. We also want to identify the mile markers on this journey, and so the stages are these mile markers, these designations of changing from one place to another place. We also want to know who we're traveling with. So we want to identify who our co-pilot is and assess if they're fit for the job. We want to help teams see the kind of information that they need to gather and where in the progression of stage of relationship development, which stage that information can be gathered most easily. Of course, we want our teens to not be injured, and so in order to protect them, we want to give them ways to be safe, to be secure in themselves, to buckle up, and that really involves knowing themselves and being safe within themselves. We also want them to pay attention to the speed and not go too quickly, and we want them to be aware of the dangers on the road. We also want them, of course, to enjoy the ride. We want them to see good partnership as a joyous thing, a fulfilling thing, and a wonderful adventure. So we will move to talking about the how. This is important that we help teens know about stages in relationship development. Let's look at how we do that. On the screen, you'll see 8 stages. And I would like for you to look at those and decide for yourself which is the first stage of those 8, which is second, which is third, and so on. If you have paper and pencil, you may want to write down the stages in the order that you see them. And if not, just make a mental note of what those are. You'll see a drop-down screen with a multiple choice question that asks you to identify the first stage. What do you think comes first? Is it a crush, a relationship? Is it hanging out, or is it sex? And Kathy will give us the results as they come in.
Yes, I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer this before I share the results with everyone. Alrighty, it looks like 42% think crush and 63% think hanging out.
Okay, that tends to be the way this breaks out, although well, it just depends. I believe that the very first stage is hanging out, and within that stage, a crush can happen. A crush, an infatuation, a flirt, all those things can happen in this phase or this stage of hanging out. We'll talk a little more about crushes in a minute. So what happens in this hanging out phase? It's a time for us to gather information, to gather data. We gather that information by observing and paying attention. As adults, I think it's really important that we create opportunities through our schools, our churches, our clubs, our sports, to give kids a chance to hang out so they can do this very important stage of data gathering. Unfortunately, many kids do a lot of their hanging out online, which is not uncommon these days, and I think that they miss some very important information by that means alone for getting to know another person. When we're face-to-face with somebody, we can observe and gather data about the person that we have a crush on or the person that we're interested in. We get to see how they interact with others, what their personality is like, what their attitudes are like, what they like and they don't like. What their intelligence level is, their drive, their ambition, their creativity, their style, their friends. Lots and lots of information we can gather about somebody else in this process of hanging out. We also get to gather data about ourselves in our connection with the person that we're interested in. So this is the part of self-observation, and we need to really encourage teens to do a lot of self-reflection and self-observation even at this hangout stage. How do I feel when I'm standing next to this person? Am I relaxed? Am I tense? Do I feel playful? Do I feel serious? Do I get bored with this person? Do I get confused by this person? Do I feel safe with this person? Am I completely trusting of them? Am I uncomfortable in any way? Do I feel competitive with them? Do I feel compliant to them? All of those things are very helpful for teens to be listening to within themselves. So there's a lot that can be learned at this stage of hanging out. And the advice I give my clients is this. Go only as fast as the slowest part of you is willing to go. Listen to your hesitations. Honor them. Listen as if they're telling you something that might be a danger or a concern, and don't override it. How long people hang out in this hanging out stage depends on the person and depends on the situation, but there are some very basic rules for the hangout stage. The first is to be social, and I talked about adults needing to give opportunities for these social gatherings for young adults so that they can gather the data in a hanging out phase. We also want to encourage people to observe what attracts them. So observe what attracts you. What do you notice about what you like and what you don't like? What turns you on, what turns you off? Pay attention to that. Assess and scrutinize. Give permission to assess and scrutinize. Now that assessment and scrutinization does not need to come out as a judgment towards another person, but it should be happening inside. As I'm watching somebody, I should be looking for things like, are they a truth teller? Do they have good relational skills? Do they have a vision for their own life, or are they wanting to hitch their wagon to somebody else's dream? Those kinds of things are ways that I can learn about somebody just by observation. And then learning what matters to me, looking on the inside, so encouraging teens to see what matters to them. What are their personal likes and dislikes about partnership? They say that luck favors the prepared. So I believe you'll be more lucky in love if you're prepared to identify what matters most to you before you get into the dating stage. There's a really lovely quote here. To know what you prefer instead of humbly saying amen to what the world tells you you ought to prefer is to have kept your soul alive. We need to encourage teens to really look inside themselves and decide what they want, and not what is being pressure on them, or what the pressure's on them to make a decision for somebody else or for some cultural or social value if it's not their own. Let's go back to the stages now, and you can see that there's hanging out as number one and crush underneath. Let's do a little hand raise about the crush thing, because it's very interesting to me to know how many people started their current relationship that they're in. Did it start with a crush? And raise your hand. Look into that box on your screen and click the hand if you had a crush on the person that you're currently in a romantic partnership with. And let's get a sense of a percentage on how many of you have started your relationship from the place of a crush.
Well, we've got those hands going up right and left. Went up very fast. Give you a few more seconds to answer that hand-raising question. Well, actually looks like maybe about 20% of the folks that answered that question say that they had a crush.
Only 20%. That's interesting, isn't it? Because it means a lot of people don't start a relationship from that place of crush. They start it from a more rational place, perhaps, or some other experience that they had that they wouldn't qualify it as a crush feeling. Let's move to identifying the next two stages. If hanging out is first, what are the next two stages? And you'll see another multiple choice question pop up, and you'll get to choose between number one, which is sex, and then breakup, for all you pessimists there. Number two, relationship and then commitment. Number three, dating and then relationship. And number four, intimacy and then relationship. What comes next? And Kathy will get those answers and then let us know which option people most chose.
I'm going to give you a few more seconds to see if we can get some more voting here. And you can vote with your mouse right on the screen. Alrighty, it looks like 93% say dating, then relationship, and then of course you see 10% says relationship, then commitment, and then 9% says intimacy, then relationship.
Okay. So most people thought dating and relationship was the next the order of the next two stages, and that is the order in which I place things: dating and then relationship. And I'll explain a little bit why. Let's talk about dating first. And let's look at this lovely definition. Dating is a form of courtship consisting of social activities done by two people with the aim of each assessing the other's suitability as a partner in an intimate relationship or as a spouse, taken from Wikipedia. This is a pretty good definition of my understanding of dating. Dating is a time to explore options and to assert our desires, to listen to our feelings and our reactions, all within a relatively safe environment due to it being public often, or most often public. I believe that dating is the most important stage of relationship development, and it is often the most neglected. 73% of girls say that they want more dating. Unfortunately, 12% of girls tell you this, that they say it's easier to have sex than have a conversation. That's a problem, obviously a problem. They don't know how to relate, and we need to give them opportunities in that hanging out stage to learn those skills of making good connection. I believe that we desperately need to revive the notion of dating and to teach young people the skills for direct, face-to-face social interaction and communication. They need to know how to make relationship assessments before hooking up. Dating is a place where this assessment is allowed and encouraged. Let's look at this interesting chart here about the difference between dating and relationship. This is often a challenging thing to distinguish these two stages. Dating has no commitment. Relationship, there's a little bit of a commitment started. In dating, it's okay to date as many people as you want. In relationship, you kind of have to deal with faithfulness, move that direction. In dating, it's not sexual. We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. And in relationship, sexual contact often begins. Public places for dating, private places for relationship. Lots of curiosity and few expectations in dating. And then in relationship, the expectations become more and more. In dating, I can take a just looking attitude, and in a relationship, there's approval and criticism issues that become more prominent. And then the exits are much easier in a dating place than once I'm into a relationship. I find this very helpful to explain these differences with young adults. There are cool things about dating, and I'm going to tell you 3 cool things about dating. The first is that dating is a time to learn. It's a time for exploration, adventure, and curiosity. You can experiment with various types of individuals. You can date an extrovert, and next week you can date an introvert. You can date someone that's popular or someone that's shy, someone that's smart, someone that's a nerd, someone that's physically fit, someone that's less fit. All sorts of varieties, and you can explore and experiment with those. Dating is a time to learn about your preferences, your likes, your needs, your values, your expectations, your own communication skills, what you can tolerate, what you can't tolerate. I suggest to my clients that they keep a journal when they're in this dating phase, and they spend a lot of time alone in reflection so that they can really listen to what they're learning about themselves and about the other person. There's lots of information to be gathered, and it's good to capture that and chew on that. Dating is also a time to learn about ourselves and an opportunity for self-evaluation. It's a time to see our own shortcomings for building a strong relationship. When I start dating, maybe I notice that I get angry more quickly than I want to, or I have poor social skills, or I have social anxiety, or I have jealousy issues that come up. These are all helpful things to notice if I want to improve my skills for attracting and holding a healthy partner. Second cool thing about dating is it's all about you. It's a time to be fully yourself and not have to pretend. In fact, you want to weed out the people that you have to fake it with, because they're not the people you want to have next to you, because you'd always be doubting whether you were liked for who you really were. So there's no need to pretend and be something different. It's a time to be fully you. There's no need to please or adjust yourself to make someone like you. There's a great saying that I use in therapy a lot, which is, it's not your job to like me, that's my job. So I encourage my clients and young people to ask, do I like them, not do they like me? Sounds selfish, doesn't it? But if I'm choosing a life partner, it would be wise for me to be really clear about what satisfies me. Then I want to watch and see how I'm treated. I want to observe the treatment that I get from the person I'm dating? Are they wanting to really get to know me? Are they listening to me? Are they helping me expand? Are they supporting my growth? Or are they shutting those things down? Another cool thing about It's All About Me is that there's no pressure to decide or choose. I get to just hang out and explore. The third cool thing about dating is it's a time to practice and build skills. I get to build my interviewing skills and learn the kinds of questions I can ask to gather the data that I need to know if somebody's a suitable partner. I can build my communication skills, both my sending skills at sending messages and receiving and listening messages or information from others. And I also get to practice boundary setting skills. This is essential, that I learn how to say no and how to take no. We don't want to stay in a relationship out of charity or pity. We want to learn to say, this isn't working for me, thank you very much, I'd like to move on. Very helpful skill, very hard skill for many of us, but an essential skill all the way through relationship and marriage, to know the ability to say, no thank you. So dating is a chance to practice, practice, practice. Again, luck favors the prepared, so get prepared, and you'll be more skillful and lucky in love. Dating is a great place to practice skills of differentiation. David Schnarch talks about differentiation as the key to healthy, long-term, passionate marriages. And differentiation is identifying who I am, offering self-support and self-soothing for who I am, building skills for doing that. And that David Schnarch says that differentiation keeps evolving, and we become more and more skillful at that, ideally, in long-term passionate partnerships. Okay, let's talk about the hard things about dating. Oh, great. But there are some hard things. And the first hard thing for many, many people is that the no sex thing. Sex is a bondo for relationships. It will plunge you into the relationship phase of relationship development and get you jump you right out of a dating phase because of this magical thing called oxytocin. Probably all know that oxytocin is the super glue or the bondo that bonds us to another individual. They find that that oxytocin released during sexual play, not even intercourse but sexual play, has an effect of reducing fear in the system. It also has the effect of increasing trust and generosity. Lovely things in a right relationship. If I've not chosen wisely or scrutinized wisely and invited somebody into my life that is not a healthy person or is a harmful person, I don't want to be trusting them, and I don't want to be generous with them, and I definitely want to keep my radar attentive to my fears and my concerns about the person. I don't want to override that. So oxytocin can override critical thinking, and that's a problem. There's also recent research on oxytocin intensifying emotional memory, so that if I have a pleasant experience with somebody and oxytocin is running through my blood, that memory of that is intensified. If I have a bad experience while I'm in a state of a flush of oxytocin, that memory of that bad experience is hard to erase, causing trauma and leaving us really vulnerable. Daniel Amen, in his book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Mind, has this wonderful quote, and I'm going to give you the whole thing because I think it's really important. Whenever a person is sexually involved with another person, neurochemical changes occur in both their brains that encourage limbic emotional bonding. Two people may decide to have sex just for the fun of it, yet something is occurring on another level they might not have decided on at all. Sex is enhancing an emotional bond between them, whether they like it or want it or not. It's hard stuff to teach young adults in our culture, where we are encouraged to explore and experiment with our sexuality without doing these other steps first. Janet Posmatier did a Wednesday webinar through Dibble last month in July, in July, not last month, on why teens hook up. And she's got a lot of great research that she explains on the hookup culture and the dangers of that, particularly information on oxytocin and its effect on our bodies. Let's see, what else is hard about dating? The second thing that's hard about dating is that we have to deal with rejection. We must learn to say no, and we must learn to receive no, and stay balanced receiving that no. We need to not spin off into depression or anger if somebody chooses not to continue a relationship with us. If we understand that we are just dating and we're not in a relationship, then that no is a little bit easier to accept, that that's part of the deal. Breakups are much easier at this stage of dating than they are once intimacy or commitment to a relationship has been established. The third hard thing about dating is that there's the possibility of dating multiple individuals at once. This is actually a really good thing and often a really hard thing. I think it's a good thing because it gives people a sense of a smorgasbord of people to pick from. I encourage my clients to date 3 people at the same time. Just try it. It will help, so that they have a feel for how this person is different from that person and is different from that person. And then when they decide to go on a second date with somebody, it's because they want to go further and they can eliminate a relationship that is not satisfying to them. So to really give yourself options in dating can be challenging. I tell my clients to tell the person they're dating that they are I'm in a dating phase of relationship exploration. I'm just in the dating phase, and to educate their partners what dating is, and that dating is just an exploration stage, and I'm not in the choosing a partner stage. I'm just dating. I think that's very helpful if they can declare that and explore dating in this more expansive and less serious, less relationship-focused way. So the next phase, let's talk about this. I'm sorry, how to date effectively. Let's look at that. The first thing to do when dating effectively is to take the shopper mentality as opposed to the merchant mentality. Start dating with a high level of self-valuing and self-support, and don't use dating as a source of validation and esteem. Don't go into dating trying to sell yourself. Go into dating seeing what's out there that attracts you. Take the shopper-buyer mentality and not the merchant. Secondly, I think it's helpful to ask a lot of questions. Be nosy and inquisitive. Very helpful. Find out what you want to know. Ask what you want to ask. Third, open yourself up. Share yourself openly. Let somebody really know you. But assess first that the situation is safe, or the person is safe for you. And then finally practice these healthy relationship skills that will improve your ability to maintain and progress towards more and more passion and deeper intimacy in a relationship. Now the next stage is the relationship stage. When do we choose to move into a relationship? When do we decide to move from dating to relationship? I believe it's a good idea to do that once we have observed how somebody is walking through the world and we like it. And then we make it clear that we'd like to walk next to them, and then we see what happens. That's called choiceful relationship. I like how you are walking through the world. I like how the choices you're making. I like the people you're hanging with. I want to walk next to that. Are you up for that? Then we can move into a relationship stage and out of the dating stage. In relationship, you have a chance to watch someone more closely and to scrutinize even more before moving to the next stage of relationship. You get to scrutinize on a daily level, perhaps, their actions and attitudes and values and choices. Do they walk their talk? Are they consistent? Miguel Ruiz, in his book, The Four Agreements, says it's not wise to move too deeply into a relationship, certainly into commitment, until you've gone through all 4 seasons with somebody. And I think that he means take a year of time to assess somebody, but I think he also means the 4 flows and changes of life, and to really listen, be with somebody in a sad time as well as a joyous time, in a lonely time, and so on.
Excuse me, Elsbeth, can you just speak up a little bit, please?
I can. I'm sorry. My voice tends to quiet down I will. I will. I will be louder.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll try and do that anyway. We just talked about that. Let's talk now about the stages. What's the next stage? We've got hanging out with possibly a crush. Number 2 is dating. Number 3 is relationship. And then what? Then what comes next? So pick from those things that are left. Commitment, intimacy, sex, and a breakup. Pick the thing that you think is next. And I imagine that there's some confusion for you, and that's intentional. And that confusion is likely, I'm going to read your minds, likely that the confusion of intimacy and sex and what that difference is, or are they the same thing? So let's do a hand raise on that. How many of you think that sex and intimacy are the same? Raise your hand, and Kathy will give us a score on whether you think sex and dating are the same thing.
I'm going to give you a few seconds to, you can click on the hand button and it'll show us how many believe that sex and intimacy are the same thing. Wow. I guess we're not moving up as fast on this one. Actually, a very low percentage right now. It looks like 3%. I think it's the same
that's good.
thing.
I think that's great because I believe that they're different. You got to have a total number there, Kathy?
Yeah, it was actually 3%.
3? Okay, all right. I believe that sexual intimacy, that sex is sexual intimacy, physical intimacy, I'm sorry, and intimacy is an emotional thing. Sex is physical, intimacy is emotional. I love this idea of intimacy, that intimacy is this revelation, this deep unfolding of my inner world and sharing that with somebody else. I think it's helpful for kids to understand that we do use the term intimacy for sex often, and I think that causes some confusion, and I like keeping these two things separate. Intimacy is a deep and open revelation of your inner world, your deepest beliefs, your hopes, your fears, your needs, your longings, your dreams. It's an open-hearted position where you are exposed and vulnerable. Not a wise thing to do unless you've scrutinized the person with whom you're doing that. It's very hard to be emotionally intimate with another person if you don't know yourself. If you don't know yourself, there's not very much for you to share around emotional intimacy. You may jump into sexual intimacy because you don't feel like there's enough of you inside to share in this emotional way. Emotional intimacy deepens and deepens and deepens as relationships develop. In ordering of stages, this is often a confusing thing for teens to understand intimacy and how that relates to the next stage, which is commitment. They don't know which one to put first. Am I supposed to be intimate before I'm committed? Am I supposed to be committed first and then I can be intimate? Well, certainly with sexual intimacy, it may be wise to wait till there's a commitment. In fact, it is very wise to wait till there's a commitment before you are sexually intimate. But in terms of emotional intimacy, it can be helpful to do prior to a commitment just to see how somebody manages the exploration of their inner world and of my inner world. When do we move to commitment? We move to commitment when there's a consensual agreement to preserve and prioritize the relationship. The individuals often make a public declaration of a marriage or a commitment ceremony when they move into this commitment phase. I think it's very helpful that before we move into commitment, we are able to identify and accept another person's faults. We don't talk about this perhaps enough, but understanding that nobody's going to come off, no one's going to be perfect, nor are we, and in choosing a partnership for life, a committed partnership, we should see what it is that we're buying or getting and having to deal with that is not perfect, and coming to accept that rather than going into a relationship with a desire to try and change and alter that in somebody else. It's wise to move into commitment when you see that the person matches your desires, they're capable of working well in a relationship, and they can sustain emotional intimacy. So here are the stages as I see them: hanging out, dating, relationship, intimacy, and commitment. And then sex and crush are really not stages. They are subparts of of these 5 stages. Excuse me. Let's look next at the what to do about teaching stage awareness to young adults. I have this book called Things to Know Before You Say Go, activity book. Excuse me. And in it are 30 activities to play with students, probably junior high age at the youngest, all the way up through college and even into adulthood. Activities to play about exploring relationship. 9 of those activities are activities that are about stage awareness. We'll play with 3 of those activities today, briefly. The first is this idea of just giving them the stages on cards, like I've done here, and asking them to order them. This young woman put hanging out first, dating second, in a relationship third, commitment fourth, and intimacy fifth. The fact that I put intimacy before commitment in my ordering, that doesn't matter. What matters is that we begin a discussion, that we begin a conversation about these stages and what's in each stage and what happens that propels us to the next stage. And the order, especially if we're talking about sexual intimacy, is really a preference that people get to choose when to add that into their into this relationship progression. I suggest in the later stages rather than in the beginning. You can see that this woman is filling out a sheet, and that sheet is a version of this. It's exploring the stages of relationship. It takes the 5 stages across the top, and then there are rows of different things that they need to fill in. I ask them to do this in a group generally. What are the other names for this stage? So they go across and fill out the other names for hanging out, dating, relationship, commitment, and intimacy. What names come to your mind? We can do a poll on this, and you can answer that in the question box. What are other names for hanging out? You can see that stirs you to start thinking about, oh yeah, well, how do people talk about that these days? So give me some ideas. See if we get some answers to other names for hanging out.
Well, we've got a few popping up here. Excuse me. It sounds like group dating or seeing someone, chilling, being with friends, kicking it.
Chilling, kicking it. Yeah.
A lot of different.
Those are all examples of hanging out. Yep. So you can see them. We can move across the columns and rows and fill this in. The second row has to do with what are the settings in which in what settings do these stages take place? What are the rules and expectations of each stage? What are the risks and benefits of each stage? Let's play with that one ourselves and talk about the risks and benefits of the relationship stage. What are the risks in the relationship stage? What are the benefits in the relationship stage? You can answer that in that question box. We'll talk about that briefly. Can you think of risks at being in a relationship and benefits of being in a relationship?
We've got someone saying one of the risks is not being accepted, and being accepted. Risk is hurt feeling. Risk is hurt feelings. Risk is getting in deeper with the wrong person. You may want another. They're listing the risks. You may not both be at the same place at the same time in your relationship.
Right. Right. So again, this having a chart like this gets kids into conversations about the risks and dangers of any one of these stages, and talking about the heartache or the challenge, the pain that can come in not being on the same page with somebody or at the same stage with somebody, and how that's painful, and how that may not be quite as painful in the dating stage if that truth comes to light. The next row has to do with exits. What are the exits for leaving a relationship at these stages? Also very good conversations to have. And then what are the bridges? What takes me from hanging out to dating? What takes me from dating to relationship? And to just have those conversations. Kids love sort of chatting and figuring out all this, and there's lots of difference of opinion and good conversation that can come from that. That's another activity you can play. It's also in that activity book. Here's a third one. This is talking about actions in relationship. So what happens, there are all these actions, these things that happen as a relationship develops, like asking deep questions. Where in the stages of relationship development does asking deep questions come up? You have a multiple choice opportunity to answer that question, and we'll just see what people answer with that. When in the stages of relationship development does asking deep questions come up? In the activity book that I have, there are 24 of these actions. We'll only talk about a couple of them today. What are we getting, Kathy, on the stages?
Oh, wow, we've got some across the board here. Let's see if I can share these with you. 53% say during the dating stage, 29 during the relationship stage, and 21 in the intimacy stage, and then a little bit in the other two.
So again, what this does is it brings into conversation this issue of asking deep questions, and where in a relationship do I do that? Do I wait all the way to a deep relationship before I do that, or can I ask deep questions when I'm dating somebody? And what are the deep questions I can ask at that stage? And so it just brings into conversation this issue of this action happens at various levels across the stages. Saying I love you. So answer that question. Where in the stages of relationship development does saying I love you come up? Probably
I'll give you a
variety of answers there as well.
Yeah, and we'll give you a few seconds to answer this. All righty. I'm going to share this with everyone. Looks like 50% say relationship stage, 39 intimacy stage, and 29 commitment stage. Then the rest is spread, 4% dating.
So if you work with teens, you probably know that saying I love you is a pretty frequent and easy to toss out term that's often done in the hanging out stage or the dating stage. But again, this brings up lots of good conversation about when is it appropriate? Do I really need to know somebody? Do I need to be in an intimate connection with them? Do I need to be committed to them before I say these words? How about expecting daily contact? Again, answer it according to what you think. Does that happen? Can I expect daily contact in hanging out? Can I expect daily contact in dating? Or is that only in a relationship or intimacy or commitment?
Now, these are all over the board here. Let's see. Let me give you a few more seconds. Okay, let's share this. 56% say relationship, and then 21% commitment, 19% dating, and then there's a few percentage in the last one.
So most in that relationship phase. So again, there's really no right answer to this, but there's lots of right discussion and conversation that can come up. And that's what we're trying to do with teens, is give them an opportunity to explore these things by playful activities or games like this. We could talk about making out. When does making out come up? We won't do that ourselves, but this is another activity. Or meeting parents. When does that action take place in the relationship development? So these are 3 of 30 activities that are in the Things to Know Before You Say Go activity book. The activity book also has other activities based mostly on these cards, which are my Things to Know Before You Say Go cards. They are questions. On the left you'll see this girl has a stack of 5 or 6 questions. The first is treasure me. Does this person treasure me? That's the front side. The second question there is self-soothing. Is this person able to self-comfort and self-soothe? The third card she's holding is time management and support and taking turns. I'm not sure what the other cards are by this picture. When the card is flipped over on the right, you see that on the back side there are additional questions. So this is accepting them, the card on the right-hand side. The front question is, can I accept this person as they are without asking them to change? Something like that. Can I accept this person? And the sub-questions are things like, do I see things about this person that I would like to change? Do I believe that my love and appreciation of this person would grow if I could help them be different in some way? So sub-questions, nuanced ideas or thoughts about really accepting somebody as they are. These cards are used for assessing values and preferences prior to dating. Kids can sort these cards and look at what matters to them in relationship, and then as they get into relationship, they can ask these questions about the person they're dating to see how somebody stacks up to their values. The next picture shows how the cards are used in this activity to identify what questions you would ask in which stage. So the stages are across the top, and then the cards, this group of teens are reading the questions and then deciding, oh, that's a question I could get the answer to in hanging out. Or, oh, that's a question that it would take me all the way to commitment to ask that or to figure that out. So again, the cards can be used in conjunction with these stages in a really playful way. Let's see, I think that's it. I am delighted that I was able to share this information about exploring stages. I believe that it's really helpful for teens to see the value of the stages of relationship as relationships unfold. I think it helps them clarify the process of romantic development. It shows them the progression of actions that lead to deeper intimacy. It amplifies the emotional and physical risks of deepening relationships too quickly. It invites discussion and consciousness of the choice points for moving into deeper connection. And it helps teens clarify their own values, expectations, and preferences for partnership selection. Thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it. I'll answer some questions if they...
Yes, Elsbeth, we do have a couple questions. First of all, we've got a couple comments that the material that you presented is very useful, and I will second that. It's great information as a parent of teens, as someone in this field, and I'm sure for those that have listened today in all their arenas. One of the things, comments when we were doing the activity on the, what happens at the stages, where in what stage would you say I love you? One person made the comment, it's probably where would you first say that you love them, because hopefully that would continue, she says, through many stages.
Let's hope that would continue, right.
So I didn't know if you wanted to comment anymore. Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to comment anymore on that, but that might be a good clarification for them to use with their teens, that statement.
Right, and to understand that, meeting their parents briefly at the door is different than coming to dinner at someone's at a partner's parent's home. So yes, these actions differ and change as the relationship progresses. Yes.
Okay. And
if I could even mention, the thought occurred to me about when you say I love you. I'm thinking that really is a transitional term. You're going from one stage into another, and could be a cue to you is if I'm really thinking I need to say this, where am I, and is my partner in the same place I am in these stages? So it's a great term. I love it.
Yeah. It's definitely a mile marker.
Yes, and you kind of touched on this, but one person, Dana, has asked, do you think that the stages are flexible and or do they change depending on your stage in life? For example, maybe sex would come at a different place for adults than it would for teens.
An older person?
Or what would you think about that?
Right. I do think the stages are flexible, and I think there are cultural issues that may affect these stages, and certainly faith issues and religious beliefs may affect the stages. I'm thinking of sexual intimacy and how that is, for many people, especially not for young kids, something that we want to encourage until they are in a committed relationship, where for adults that's probably a bit more flexible. I know it is, especially for divorced people who have already who are no longer virgins or trying to hold on to some sense of exclusiveness around one sexual partner for life. So yes, I think that there is flexibility in those stages, and it differs based on a variety of things. But generally, this is the progression that relationships flow in.
Right. Great. This is a good one for those that are going to be presenting these stages to teens. Kristen wants to know, do you teach stages would you teach the stages in small groups, and or would you mix the genders, or would you do small groups? How the logistics of, say, a group work?
Yeah, yeah.
And what's
We usually
ideal?
do 5, yeah, 5, maybe 4 in a group, 4 to 5, 4 to 7 in a group. Too many more than that, and then people can be sort of silent in the participation. And so we want it small enough that people are encouraging all members to talk, but not so small that it feels burdensome to answer, or that there's some mix of interaction, which makes it more playful. So usually it's I would say 4 to 7, and I do mix the genders when I do the groups, because I like for girls to hear how guys see it different, and for guys to hear how women or girls see things in a different way. And it just brings up lots of conversation, which is the point of all of this, is to talk about these stages and the cautions and the joys of each step in the progression.
Okay, good. Can you give us, I believe this is the last question, and I will make a remark on something else, but can you give us some examples of some questions that teens might ask during the hanging out stage? You talked a lot about asking questions and finding out about the other person, and also finding out about yourself. What would be some examples of things you would suggest that they could suggest to the teens they're working with?
Oh, I think the largest question, most foundational question, there are 2 of them, and that is, do I trust this person, and does this person tell the truth? And if they tell the truth, I can trust them. So trust and truth-telling seem to be the most important questions for building a relationship. If the answers to those 2 questions are no, it's probably not wise for me to move forward into dating them even. If I can't trust them, or see that they're telling me, if they're giving me accurate information. But there's lots of stuff. One of the hangout questions, or one of the questions you could ask in hanging out from my cards are, does this person, how do they get along with pets and animals? That's sort of a silly question, but that can tell you an awful lot about somebody just by watching how they interact with their own pets or with your pets. That's not so much in a social setting that would require that they, maybe you meet at the park and you can see that information, but let me think of some other ones.
Well, and just to tell you, that's the great thing about these cards, for those of you that have asked that type of question, is those questions are in the cards, and the activities that go with the cards will help you moderate the group setting with those questions.
There are 76 questions, 76 questions to ask before you give your heart away. That's a lot. That's a lot of information that you need to know. And what's very fun to do with teens is to give them 5 cards and say, put these in order of importance. And they can't do it. It's hard because they're all important. And I think that's really helpful for them to see that there are 76 very important things to consider before you move too deeply into romance.
Well, that's great. A number of people have asked, and thank you so much for answering those questions. Quite a few people have asked about getting the PDF or the PowerPoint. What I plan to do is when I archive the webinar on our website, and I hope to have that done by Monday, there will be, you can go to www.dibbleinstitute.org/webinars. And if you scroll down to this particular webinar, which will be probably after, I'll post the one for next month, and then it'll be this one. Right below that, you'll see PDFs for the PowerPoint. So if you want to listen to it again, you can actually take notes on it, or use like some of the sayings and that some of the quotes that Elsbeth used. And we'll also have a couple of the charts that Elsbeth had used as a PDF. There's also a sample lesson. If you go to our bookstore and you go to the things to know before you say go, if you go to there is sample activities, sample activity lesson. And it has a sample of the cards, and it's a great thing for you to try the lesson out with your students or with your teens, and for you to share that with other colleagues so they can kind of see what the programming is about. So I think that's it for me.
Thanks, Kathy, for filling in that information. Important information for you to know We certainly enjoyed meeting with you today, and thank you for joining us. And I'd like to mention any extension people out there listening in. I'm going to be in Pittsburgh next week at the National Extension Conference. I invite you to stop by our table and say hi. We'd love to meet you. We'll have sample cards there that you can even look at these and see how they might fit into your programming. We want to keep in touch with you. Kathy already mentioned the Dibble Institute website. There's our monthly e-newsletter that is full of all kinds of research, updates on funding opportunities, and of course updates on our various product line. Like us on Facebook. We'd love to have that. And follow us on LinkedIn and text us to 22828. And you can email us at relationshipskills@dibbleinstitute.org. And there's our phone number as well, and you can talk to Kathy and ask her questions, see what she knows. There is also, as she mentioned, the free sample lesson. Any orders made within 30 days of this webinar, if you use the code webinar, you get free shipping on your order. So that's a good way to save an extra 10%. I guess that's, oh, there's a survey. Oh, you know, we love to hear what is happening, what you need to know, what you would prefer for future webinars, and any comments you have. Please fill the survey out. It just take a few minutes. And also, if something comes up and you have a comment, just let us know, and we'll be glad to answer those either directly to you through, or someone will call you if necessary. We do trainings, and we'd love to just hear about you. You know, it gets lonely out here in the outer world without hearing from you. Thanks for joining us again. Have a great year and continue supporting those kids out there. Bye, Elsbeth. Thank you so much. And Kathy.
Bye-bye.